it's interesting that you say at 50 you're happy he went platinum, and yet to some kids out there he dissed you on his album.
This guy's young, he's vigorous, he's full of, you know, energy, and, you know.
He's throwing it out there again. Come on, guys, come on, take a shot.
I'm working on my new stuff, and there's a possibility, you know, I'm going to say something. But honestly, he's not ready to get in the ring with, yet. He needs 6, 7 more albums.
Nasir Jones exploded onto the hip-hop scene in '94 with his classic debut Illmatic, earning him instant respect amongst the hip-hop community. The follow-up album spawned numerous crossover hits, establishing him as a true superstar, but leaving many hardcore fans fuming. After a period of relative quiet, a turning point came in 2001 when Jay-Z openly dissed Nas in an attempt to hijack the ultimate title of the King of New York. Nas responded with the stinging comeback track Ether, and followed with the albums Stillmatic and Godson, which were held as his finest work since his debut. Now with the release of his new double album Street's Disciple, Nas has reclaimed the streets and taken his rightful place in the Hip Hop Hall of Fame.
What should I call him? Nas Escobar, Nasty Nas, or NAS Nas, or Mr. Jones even. Welcome to MTV, TV Base. Nice to have you.
Thanks.
Cool, man. I want to talk about your whole history from day one up, because I read in your biography that you left school kind of young, you quit school kind of young, and for someone who's such a lyricist as yourself, that surprised me. Why did you quit school?
School quit me. You know, they chased out tons of kids like me, those schools. And what was good for me was I did want to learn, so I continued to learn. I had parents who would teach me and, you know, just tell me things and, you know, guide me in the right way, so I kept learning.
Around that time in New York, there was a whole movement like Knowledge Yourself, and there was a black awareness movement going on. Were you wrapped up in that at all?
Yeah, I did get caught up in that, and part of the reason why is because, you know, listening to music, rap music, and groups like Tribe Called Quest.
At what point in your life did you realise hip-hop was your future? And it was a viable future, not just like, you know, you see, you go to New York today, there's every kid on the streets an MC, I want to be a star. At what point did you really think it was going to happen for you?
The first time I really thought that I wanted it to happen for me was when I saw Run DMC. When I saw them, I knew that this was real. You know, I heard so many different kinds of rap records, and I knew it was the new thing. I knew it was something great, but when I saw Run DMC do it, it just changed my life. And then, since then, there's been different times and places, even up to this day, I still say, you know, wow, this is really happening.
So the first time I was made aware of you was on the album Live at the Barbecue, Main Source's album. How did that come about?
I met the lead guy in that group, Main Source, and they were working on their first album, and at the time, he was about 16 years old, producing for a lot of big rap stars.
Producing at 16?
Yeah, man, he was ahead of his time. He gave me the opportunity to be on his album, and which was the song Live at the Barbecue.
Where they came and went, that was a launch pad for your career.
Yeah.
You then got picked up by Sony at the time.
Yeah.
Then came, in everybody's book, whether they love you or hate you or whatever, they say you dropped one of the classic hip-hop albums of all time, Illmatic. Did you realise you were making a classic album at the time?
I wanted to make an album that would be respected by everyone forever, as far as a rap album. I did want to make that kind of album, but when I started it, classic was something that I wanted to feel at the end of the recording process. I never knew so many people would call it a classic.
But for that album, you had some of the chief protagonists in hip-hop. You had Primo, who I think you worked really well with. Pete Rock is another producer, Large Professor, as we said. And hip-hop in '94, when that album dropped, was just, for me, the edge of still pure. What I mean by that is, we had Rakim before you, we had Chuck D, we had Run DMC LL, and it was still had a really warm, natural sound. No hype. There was none of this pre-hype stuff you get today. Within 2 years of you making your follow-up, Bad Boy came along, we were talking Bling, Ghetto Fabulous. So the pressure was more than just following up your first album, wasn't it?
Absolutely. You know, it's, the rap music became in the billion-dollar business. As you have more competition, you have a huger audience than I did with my first record. You know, navigate through all of that and keep my position was important to me. You know, it was like either you go all the way now or you're done, because you got, you know, Tupac on the top of the charts with real records, Dear Mama. You know, you had Biggie, you know, killing it. Snoop and Dre. It was like, wow, this is now, it's on.
What did you do? How did you know, what was your approach?
I just took, I said, okay, you know I could do this. I could handle this, and got in there and you know, and just start cranking out records.
They were quite commercial compared to the first album.
Yeah, it was way more commercially accepted. It was my way of shaking off so many people at the time that were coming out with either my voice on the hooks or rhyming with my voice. And I felt so untalented when I turned on the radio and heard other people doing what I do well. I didn't feel like there was a need for me to be around. I felt like I had to kind of like go over that.
That is bizarre hearing that from you, man, because to say you felt untalented after the first album, and just because people were biting your style and you thought they were doing it better than you?
Well, the thing is, anything that's new and that's good out there, people imitate it. Like, people were sounding like Biggie. So many kids in New York or all across the world sound like Jay. And after a while, that has to get frustrating for him even today. And at that time, they were coming out sounding like Illmatic. And it makes you a little bit worried, because if you can get this sound somewhere else, what do you need me for? And you kind of question yourself, you know. So my thing was, you know, I want to talk to the world. On my first record that they're trying to copy, I said the world is yours and things like that. So on the next album, it was about making that become life. If I Rule the World. The Fugees were like 20 million records, so to have Lauryn Hill on my record,
as a blessing,
who is not commercial, she's a pure artist, I thought was great.
You had people wanting to battle you. You had people wanting to dethrone you if you had the crown. You know, this whole Crown King of New York kind of thing happened after Big passed, and then you had a time when people were saying, is he ever going to approach the class of Illmatic again? And the question kept coming up every time your name was mentioned. But you didn't, instead of jumping out into the spotlight, I couldn't find you. What was going on?
I've never been the type that's really tries to sell himself. There are times, you know, you work, you go, you tour, you do promo, and you want the world to hear it. And if the world hears it and the world loves it, and that means you sell 70 million albums like Thriller, then great. I never wanted to wake up every day to figure out numbers and business and, you know, marketing plans that took days and weeks to racking your brain up. I just wanted to make music.
This is how the hip-hop game has really changed. Talking about numbers and the business side of the music business, like so many rappers today make it very obvious they're very aware of the business, not so much the music, the business. You became, in a sense, out of step with those guys, because those guys were all about becoming moguls. P. Diddy is a typical example. His contribution to the game was pretty vast when you look back now. You know, he made his moves, and at the time people were criticising him heavily, and the same people criticise him for wearing his clothes today. What do you think of that?
You know, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's never enough. You will run yourself thin, spread yourself thin trying to please everybody. So the focus is when people start talking about you, and, you know, don't fall into it. Don't believe it. You really, it doesn't help you either way, whether someone's talking about you. And when they stop talking about you is the problem. You know, so continue on with what you're doing, because eventually, like, you know, people are going to come around. They want to see if you're going to break. People want to, you know, throw darts at you to see if you break, see if you are really the guy that you say you are. And you just have to, it's a price of fame.
You're the perfect person to talk to about the game then and the game now, and how you see yourself. After the first 3 albums, did you feel the need to make a statement and recapture some of hip-hop's past, because there seemed to be a feeling that, okay, people went for the crossover, and that's as far as a compromise you were going to make was, I'm going to make a couple of tunes, If I Rule the World, or you know, some catchy tunes or whatever, Street Dreams, or just, you know, there's a message in there, but musically, I want to cross over a bit more. And then you seem to come back, you know, Godson, you know, Stillmatic, as if you had a real point to prove that maybe the game had lost its way.
Absolutely. I had to remind a lot of people, because a lot of the artists were starting to fall into making a lot of R&B records, R&B sounding records to cross over. And it's even still today, this day, like, take for instance a 50s album, you know, who is a good artist, and his record, The Candy Shop, is more appealing to the females and more, and you're supposed to do that. That's strategic, to do your records that, you know, the people are going to dance to and stuff like that. But I think too many artists were getting caught up with making those records on all of the albums and all of their singles, and that's what was ruining our music. So, you know, I think people forgot, like, how I came into rap music, what I represent and what I stand for, because I make a record that's more club friendly or more for girls. Doesn't mean that, you know, I wasn't inspired by Rakim and Public Enemy, that I wasn't out in the parks in Queensbridge with the jams, outside live with the, you know, in the street parties and stuff, where I was watching all these things happen, all these things that were the ingredients for my music, for me, for the type of music I wanted to make. I learned out there in the streets. So I have to remind people of who I am, and at the same time, you know, give music back to hip-hop that is hip-hop.
When you came out, R&B was dominant in terms of the biggest artists were singing R&B style records, and rappers were guesting on their tracks occasionally. You know, right. you get to guest on one of these multi-platinum singers' tracks, you're going to get a whole new level of exposure. Now it's completely flipped.
Right.
You know, you got Mary guesting on it. Well, Mary always was,
right,
in fairness to Mary, but you've got some big artists who no longer sell in the units. They used to queuing up to guest with a rapper.
That's right. And
you got rappers singing.
Right.
Now, when I heard Diddy sing the first time, I laughed out of Dodge. I was crying. I was saying, right, what are you singing for? You're a rapper. And now everybody does it.
Right.
To get radio play and to get the girls and the fan base. Is that where hip-hop started losing its way?
Absolutely. It does start losing its way that way, because young kids are watching hip-hop for the first time, and this is their first impression. This is their first piece of hip-hop, and the first way they're hearing it is like that. Then, you know, the future is, we're finished.
What is your definition of a pretty pure hip-hop record? Like, you did Get Down, which is using the old James Brown break,
yeah,
which is how I used to hear a lot of hip-hop, was based on breaks, like old funk breaks. As I watched the video, I just got drawn back into the first hip-hop jams I went to as an MC on stage with just a mic and a tight crowd,
right,
you know, into it. And compared to videos that came on afterwards, you know, girls everywhere and Bentleys and what have you, I thought that's the difference.
Well, the advantage that I do have is my seniority as a rapper, MC. So I think I've done so much that now I can make a song where it just feels like the way it used to be. Whereas the guys today haven't done enough to do that yet, maybe. And, you know, the American dream is girls, cars, and money. So, you know, kids want to see that. They don't want to hear an elder talking to them about life too much. They respect elders who still have money, you know, more than anything, you know, so they respect money. The kids today want to fantasize. So when they see these videos and see you living that life, you are living the fantasy. You are the star. And the MC is lacking.
Is he dying?
No, the MC's not dying. There's tons of great MCs, and there are tons of great students. I was a great student. I still am. There's tons of great students that are out there just waiting for the right time, I think.
When you did I Can, that was a huge statement record. For many reasons in my mind, because it was so aimed at such a young audience, included young people, message was strong,
It was stripped, you know what I mean? But it's still, I thought, well, is that a risk for Nas to do a record like that? So when you recorded I Can and decided that's a single, were you being a preacher?
I thought I had to be. I didn't want to be a preacher, but I thought at that point in time, I thought it was good to be a preacher. It was about taking a risk, but it was more than a risk. I didn't care about the risk, because if women are listening, and I make songs for women. If thugs are listening, I make songs for thugs. If college guys are listening, I make songs for them. And kids are listening.
You've done your job. That's what you aimed at.
I can't. I don't really necessarily want the kids to hear all the other stuff I'm talking about. So, but they are listening. I can't stop them. It's really that stuff like that Slick Rick used to do with Hey Young World, the world is yours. That meant a lot to me. But you know what's funny, when I started to, I hear people putting their raps, Nas loved the kids, I love the guns or whatever. I was like, yeah, I love the kids, you know. But it was funny how so many people want to criticize you for helping the kids, but if I make records about killing all day, that's fine. Don't ever say anything good.
I've got to hit you on the beef situation, because when you started out in the game, battling MCs was part of hip-hop. It was just part of it. Beef changed completely with the East Coast, West Coast thing. We know this.
Yeah.
A lot of people watching this show are gonna, the first example of beef for them in their time is you and Jay-Z. What they got was two rappers at the top of their game shooting their best shots basically on the mic. How did you come out of that? Did you think it was a healthy situation, or you wish you never got embroiled in the first place?
I think it was a healthy situation. You know, it was there was a lot of subliminal beefs between a few rappers, but I've never really heard it go that far, and the only time it went that far was Pac and Biggie. And it was really more Tupac, because Big didn't really respond to Tupac lyrically, like attacking him. Us, Tupac alone was so effective and powerful. This created these beefs, and people died. So since then, of course, you know, nobody in hip hop was even trying to go that way, because, you know, we got out of the streets. We do this music to help us get our families out of the streets. So why we want to go back to the streets once we get out? So everyone's kind of been chill, but inevitably there are battles, and because there's a lot of we from the streets, you know, yo, I ain't gonna let him talk about me like that. I ain't gonna let him talk about me like that, and you know. But so when this thing happened with me and him, you know, it was like it was an MC battle, you know. So it didn't have nothing to do with, you know, I'm going to whack him out. He's going to try to whack me out, because we men.
I think people got that straight away. Yeah. I don't think anybody at any point thought this was going to escalate beyond what it was.
So and by saying that, it was healthy. And it was great. It was great for me, because it's one thing being a rapper who can sell records or who can, you know, but to go down in history as someone who's also battled is even hotter.
Did you win?
Know, I think I did.
So just to get back to Stillmatic now, Stillmatic and Godson.
I don't really think people understand how this works and how it worked in the day. You mentioned at the start of this interview Tribe Called Quest, groups like De La Soul. There were other groups like the Jungle Brothers' first album, it was Black Sheep. There were a lot of groups that over here in London we were jumping up and down about. We were buying, you know, we were buying them and thinking these guys are selling 5 million records.
Right.
And then as I got older and I looked back at SoundScan or whatever I was looking at, I'm like, you mean they haven't sold a platinum album yet in their career?
Crazy.
And the real heads weren't selling records. So for you to go from Nostradamus to Godson and Stillmatic, were you risking selling less or selling more?
My last works were, you know, if you come from a business point of view, they were big risks. Because you got to think, I came into the business around that time when groups like Brand Nubian, who I would know was platinum, wasn't. At that time, the only platinum rap groups were Run DMC, LL Cool J, Legends. So of course I didn't expect that to go platinum, and it took a long time for my first album to go platinum. It took years.
Yeah, I know. That's another thing. I was shocked. I thought Illmatic must have done 5 million.
No, it took years.
And now, how do you feel about a guy going platinum like 50 Cent in a week. Selling what it took Illmatic years to do, he does in a week.
I'm proud of Illmatic and how it sold that way. And I'm also proud of how 50's record sold, because hip-hop, no matter who's doing it, hip-hop to me has to stay number one. It doesn't have to be Nas number one. You know, it doesn't have to be 50, it doesn't have to be one guy all the time, but somebody in hip-hop has to keep it going.
It's interesting that you say that 50, you're happy he went platinum, and yet to some kids out there, he dissed you on his album.
Yeah, but, you know, this guy's young, he's vigorous, he's full of, you know, energy, and, you know.
He's throwing it out there again. Come on, guys, come on, take a shot. He's like, he wants everyone to put his name in their records.
Yeah, I mean, 50, he's an artist who's really basically, he came in the game like that. He came in the game, calling out a lot of people, and his career is basically about publicity. But you can't really knock it. You got to just say, hey, he finds a way to eat his way, and other people find a way.
Back in the day, guys would be like, I'm going to get him. Don't mention my name on your track unless it's positive. If you're mentioning my name, I'm going to have to write something about you. Are you over that because you took Jay on?
Nah, anybody could get it. You know, anybody could get it. So I'm working on my new stuff, and there's a possibility, you know, I'm going to say something. But honestly, he's not ready to get in the ring yet. He needs 6, 7 more albums. Yeah. But, and, you know, I'm waiting. I'll wait.
The person I was really pleased you got with was, she's my favourite girl in this business, and that's your new wife.
Yeah.
Wonderful person. Couldn't stop talking about you before you got married. You're also obviously famously engaged.
Yes.
To a guy who represents all of that.
Yeah.
And a lot more from Queensbridge.
Definitely.
Nice. How's that going? Is that cool?
It's hard, man. Like, I'm not even gonna lie and say that it's a piece of cake, because it's not. No relationship is, and particularly not in this industry.
You're touring, he's touring.
It's hard. That's I think the hardest thing.
The mobile phone bill must be up there.
Absurd.
Sick.
Really bad.
It's not often it's organically done like that. How's that all going, you and police?
It's good, man. You know, we friends. You know, when you're friends, it works, you know. I'm not tripping off of the publicity and all of that, because I could never put myself in a position to be with someone just to take pictures. She just so happens to be a singer. And, you know, in life, I like to get everything I wanted. You know, if I say I like that car, I want it, and I usually get it. I usually get everything I want. I saw her, I said I want it, and I said I want to keep it. And I usually get everything I want.
I'll be honest, that is one woman. Like, if she didn't want you, I don't think you would have got her.
You're right about that.
You know.
I should have done it a long time ago. You know, we always worry about things. We're always scared and worried about Mr. Right, Mrs. Right. You know, but it's all good. If you're feeling it, go for it. And she makes that easy. She's, you know, someone to talk to about anything. So
the new album's a double. I thought it was going to be a treble. It was in a big case like this, right?
Street's Disciple, man. This one, really, one of my favorite rap albums is the Wu-Tang double album. Tupac's and B.I.G.'s Life After Death. Scarface's My Homies double album. It's just a big statement. I should have done it years ago.
Definitely.
And
you know,
it's just the only issue with it is that it came late. It came late, but still I knew it was coming late. But I still wanted to put it out. I didn't want to just keep recording and eventually just say, you know, all right, I've had enough of this, and never had put out a double record.
The Bridging the Gap record was, again, you know, you did I Can.
Yeah.
Risky record. And then you put your pops in a record.
Yeah. I can't, you know, if I had to do it over, all of this over again, I wouldn't do it different, you know.
On the Street Side, Paul, you've got a track called Illmatic.
I certainly do.
You are shouting out people like Tiger Woods, and you're being quite controversial on that record.
You know what's funny, Trevor? A lot of people, they say that's controversial because of the way that we talk about the destruction of hip-hop, what's happening and how it's turning into something else. But when I used to listen to Ice Cube and listen to Public Enemy and NWA and even Slick Rick, early Slick Rick, the stuff that never got released where he mentioned people's names and stuff, that's just hip hop. That's just hip hop. Even B.I.G. with dreams of an R&B chick, and he names girls that he really want to do, and that's street corner conversation.
Also, you have dark and you have light. You have No One with Maxwell.
Right.
Which is Maxwell singing like Marvin Gaye. Is that a record company thing or was that a you thing?
That was me. I'm a big fan of Maxwell, saw him live. Asked him to do it. I didn't think he would because he's never recorded with any rapper before. Yeah. So to get him on the record was amazing. He came to the studio all the time. He was really, really gung-ho about it. Got in there, had a lot of ideas, and you know, it was a great experience.
You want to introduce the guy who's guesting on that track as well, because he signed to your label.
Yeah, down for Quan. I don't work with a lot of artists. Artists tend to be crazy, you know, and finicky and just crazy.
You're not talking about AZ, are you? Because AZ, I used to work at the record label that AZ was an artist for. Can we find that guy? Excuse me, I'm going to New York and I'm like, where's AZ? I don't know. Let's ask Nas. We come anyway.
So you know
yeah,
exactly
I know,
what it's about. You know how it is.
Guy potential.
You know, I've had artists get down with me, not AZ, but I've had other artists get down, and then later on go off and you know, mad because they don't understand why it's not taking off. But you know, someone like Quan was just real.
And when you're gonna put the mic down, but we hope it ain't gonna be soon.
Not soon, no time soon.
No, it's been a pleasure, bro.
Thank you, bro.